We are on to week 10 of the 2020 college football season, and as we always do, Tim will be going over my updated rankings for this week of the college football season. And week 9 certainly was a big week of college football, one of the bigger ones that we've seen up until this point. We saw the Big Ten in their second week of action. We also saw, of course, Wisconsin go down with COVID, and it doesn't look like they're going to be playing over the next couple of weeks. They had their game against Nebraska canceled, and they won't be playing, or it's likely that they won't be playing against Purdue this week either. So obviously, we're starting to see a few teams have to postpone some games. And other than that, I mean, we've seen the SEC have a couple of postponed games, but Florida came back this week. They had their first game back in, I think, 3 weeks against Missouri. And so it's looking pretty good for the SEC right now. And so all around, it's pretty awesome that we've made it to this point already. But yeah, once again, we're going to be going over our updated rankings for week number 10 here today, starting out with 1 through 7. And Alabama is actually moving up to number 1 this week, and Clemson is moving down to number 3. And before I get everyone screaming at me in the comments for this, Clemson has just not been very consistent, and I'm going to say that over and over again. I mean, Clemson's a great team. They've had a couple of big blowout wins, like they completely destroyed Georgia Tech a couple of weeks back, and I also understand that Trevor Lawrence was out with coronavirus, and he is out for the next couple of weeks. However, I mean, the reason why I've got Clemson at number 3 this week is because of their defense. I mean, their defense was absolutely horrible against Boston College. I mean, really, if you look at Clemson from last week against Boston College, their main problem was on the defensive side. I mean, their offense played okay. They only put up 28 points, but still, I mean, with a new quarterback who I think is either a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, I'm not quite sure, but I know he's still very young. He played very well in his first game. And then if you look at Clemson in general, it's just the defensive side was absolutely horrible for the Tigers this week, and so that's why I decided to move them down a couple of spots, because I mean, we've seen their defense look a little bit questionable at certain points of the season so far, and so I put Alabama and Ohio State in front of them, at least for this week. I mean, if Clemson can play much better against Notre Dame this upcoming week, I think Clemson could easily go back up to the number 1 position. But this week, just because of how terrible their defense played especially, I've got them at number 3. Alabama takes over at number 1, though. They shut out Mississippi State 41-0. They are 6-0, looking like a great team right now. Ohio State beat Penn State 38-25. And that was a big game as well, considering Penn State is considered to be a good team. Obviously, they're 0-2 now, so Penn State is not looking like a national contender at all right now. But, I mean, that was still a great win for Ohio State. Penn State is no easy team to beat. So, yeah, big win there for Ohio State, 38-25. They got the big win there over the Nittany Lions. Number 4, we've got Notre Dame. They're moving up 1 over Georgia as they beat Georgia Tech 31-13 last week. They're 6-0, so Notre Dame is looking really good, and they've got that big showdown against Clemson this upcoming weekend, so that's going to be one of your big games coming up this week. And I mean, we actually have 2 top 7 matches, 2 top 6 matches going on this weekend. We also have Georgia and Florida coming up, which I've got Georgia at 5 and Florida at 6 heading into this week number 10. And Georgia beat Kentucky last week 14-3, and they're moving down just 1 position because, I mean, I wasn't very convinced by how well Georgia played in that matchup. I mean, they should have definitely put up more than 14 points against a team like Kentucky. So I decided to move them down 1. I kind of swapped them with Notre Dame for this week, but Georgia still is 4-1, and they're definitely a top team in the nation right now. Same with Florida. I mean, they looked really good, and their win against Missouri, they were moving up 2 after last week, and they're 3-1. And I mean, they did have a loss to Texas A&M. Actually, I think it was Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, obviously Texas A&M is a team that I've got at number 7 right below them, but still, I think both teams should be right around the same position. Texas A&M had a win against Arkansas 42-31, which honestly, I mean, you shouldn't be allowing Arkansas to score 31 points. But then again, I mean, Arkansas has not looked that bad this season so far. So, I mean, a win's a win in that situation, but Texas A&M is 4-1. As well. Moving on to 8 through 14, I've got Cincinnati at 8, and I think Cincinnati is number 6 in the AP poll this week, which really surprises me. I mean, Cincinnati is a good team, but I don't think they're top 6 quite yet. I mean, if they keep winning and if they stay undefeated, I'll probably put Cincinnati up into the top 6 at some point, but I think they're going to stay at number 8 for now for me. They did beat Memphis 49-10, very dominant win there. So yeah, they are moving up 2 after a win like that. And they're moving over Wisconsin. Wisconsin staying at number 9 after their so-called bye week. They were supposed to play Nebraska on the road this week, which obviously they got canceled because they were basically going to have to be down to their 4th-string quarterback if they were to play against Nebraska, which is totally reasonable. I mean, they would have been down to, I think, Vandenboom. That's who their quarterback would have been. So yeah, Jack Conant, obviously he's out with an injury. And then, yeah, you would have been down to Graham Mertz, but then he got tested positive for COVID, and they also had Wolf test positive, so Wisconsin definitely is in a messy situation right now. But I think once they're back, Wisconsin should be a top 10 team. BYU is going to be number 10 after their win against Western Kentucky, 41-10. And I think BYU is for real this year. I mean, they haven't really played any strong team yet, but they are 7-0 for 1, and for 2, they've had blowouts basically against every team except for 1. So BYU has been extremely dominant, and that's what you have to be if you're not in the Power 5. You have to dominate every single opponent because, I mean, most teams outside of the Power 5 are not very good, and BYU's been mainly playing Group of 5 conference teams. But BYU's been dominating everyone, so that's why I think BYU is for real this season, and that's what I need to see out of a Group of 5 or an outside of the Power 5 team is they need to be dominant against each one of their opponents, which BYU has been that so far. Their quarterback is great, and I think BYU is a team to watch out for right now. Miami's number 11. They had a bye week this week. They are 5-1, and they moved up 1 as well. Indiana's coming in at 12 as well, and they're moving up 5 after their win against Rutgers, 37-21. And honestly, that's not a very good win. But then again, considering Rutgers beat Michigan State in the first week of Big Ten action, and Michigan State beat Michigan this week, Rutgers honestly does not look like a terrible team right now. So Indiana, I think that's a good win. Indiana's moving up 5 to number 12 this week. They're 2-0, and I think Indiana's looking like a top 3 team in the Big Ten right now, which sounds insane, but that's just kind of how 2020 has been so far. So Indiana is a team to watch out for if you're in the Big Ten. Oregon's number 13. Of course, they start their action next week against Stanford, and they're going to be number 13. They have not played a game yet. Once again, their first game will be this Saturday. 14 is going to be Iowa State. They beat Kansas 52-22. Great win there. They're moving up 6 after that win. They're 4-2. Here's our 15 through 21. Oklahoma State drops 9 positions to number 15 after their overtime loss to Texas. 34-41 was the final score there. And Texas, I actually predicted Texas to win that game in the first place. I mean, if you look at Texas, I mean, especially kind of the pattern of the Big 12 as well. I mean, Oklahoma State's a good team, but then again, I mean, they've had several close games, so it was kind of bound to happen for Oklahoma State to take a loss. But Texas, I mean, they're looking pretty good. Sam Ehlinger's been definitely stepping it up, and he's been having a pretty decent he had a pretty decent October is what I should say. So, I mean, I think Texas is a team that's kind of back on the rise, especially after a big win against Oklahoma State like they had. And looking at Oklahoma, they're coming in at 16. They're moving up 6 after their blowout win to Texas Tech, 62-28. And that is the way I expected Oklahoma State to play this season. 62 points. I mean, that's usually what we see out of Oklahoma. And Spencer Rattler definitely had a great game there against Texas Tech. And if they can just play like that for the rest of the season, I mean, Oklahoma definitely could be back in the top 10 by the time we hit late November. So, I mean, Oklahoma in general is a team that I think, I mean, they've got talent. They've got, I mean, loads of talent considering how good their recruiting is. But they're 4-2. They've already taken 2 losses, so I don't expect them to be a college football playoff team. But, I mean, after a big win like that against Texas Tech, I think Oklahoma is right back on the rise. They just need to keep this momentum going and keep getting some wins over the next couple of weeks. So, honestly, for Oklahoma, the next couple of weeks are going to be crucial for them to keep winning, because if they take another loss sometime in here, that's probably going to drop them out of the rankings again, and that's just going to be a bad situation for the Sooners. 17 is going to be USC. They have their first game next week, and they're going to be starting out at number 17 for me. 18 is going to be Auburn, and they're moving up 6 after their win against LSU. And honestly, LSU has just been absolutely horrible this season. I mean, they looked pretty good last week in week 8, but I'm talking about, like, for week 9, they lost 48-11. Auburn got the win there by almost 40 points over LSU, which is insane to me. I mean, LSU, considering how good of a team they were in 2019, I mean, they have loads of talent. And the thing is that you do have to consider, and something that I didn't consider heading into this season, was LSU lost basically a dozen starting players to the NFL. They basically had a dozen players drafted into the 2019 NFL or into the 2020 NFL draft, which is just crazy to me. I mean, Joe Burrow obviously was a great quarterback. He's exceptional. And for LSU just to be as bad as they are this season, it's honestly stunning to me. But great win for Auburn. I got to give Auburn credit for that one, because 48-11 is a great score, and they're moving on to 4-2. Coastal Carolina comes in at 19, and they had a shutout win over Georgia Southern, 51-0. And Coastal Carolina has been having quite a season so far. They're 6-0 and looking like a pretty good team right now. So watch out for Coastal Carolina if you're in the Sun Belt. Texas is coming in at 20, and they obviously beat Oklahoma State 41-34. They're also 4-2, as is a ton of teams in the Big 12 right now. And they're coming back into the rankings at 20 this week. SMU is also coming back in at 21. They beat Navy 51-37 was their final score there. And just because they're 6-1, I decided to bring SMU back in. I mean, I think SMU is worthy of a top 25 position. Moving on to 22 through 25, I've got Marshall at 22, and the AP poll has got Marshall much higher. I think Marshall's number 15 this week in the AP poll, which really surprises me. I think Marshall, I mean, they haven't really convinced me yet that they're a good team. I mean, they still got to get a couple more good wins for me to really think that Marshall is a real team. But I mean, yeah, they're 5-0. They're looking pretty good for the most part, but I still got to see a couple more good wins out of Marshall before I put them into the top 20. Michigan's number 23. They ended up losing to Michigan State 24-27. Stunning loss there for the Wolverines, especially after having a big win against Minnesota in I think it was week 8. And obviously they lost that one 24-27. They're moving at 10 this week. And they're 1-1 too. Michigan, I thought after their win against Minnesota that they'd be a for real team this season. And I thought Jim Harbaugh, I thought this could have been, or that there was a possibility that this could be Michigan's year, as crazy of a year that it is. But after that loss to Michigan State, you can't lose games like that if you're wanting to be a Big Ten championship team, or if you want to be a college football playoff contender. You can't take losses to Michigan State. And Jim Harbaugh has always had trouble with that. He just can't beat Michigan State or Ohio State. And that's the main problem with Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh, personally, and I was talking about this last night on the community page, I think he's on the hot seat. I think Jim Harbaugh's, I don't see Jim Harbaugh making or allowing this Michigan team to get past 9 wins in any regular season. And let alone in this season, for him to take a loss to the Spartans like that, that's not looking very good for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh right now. 24 is going to be Northwestern. They are actually coming into the rankings after their win against Iowa. They are looking to, they're 2-0 right now. They beat Iowa 21-20 last week. West Virginia, and then they got a win over Kansas State, 37-10. Big win there for West Virginia. Kansas State was looking really good, and I think I had them at 16 last week. So, West Virginia sitting at 4-2 is not looking all that terrible. They did take a loss to Texas Tech, though, in week 8, which is kind of the reason why I considered leaving West Virginia out for this week. But I think after a win like they had against Kansas State, they deserve to be a top 25 team, at least for now. First 5 out, 26 is Boise State, 27 is Penn State, 28 is North Carolina, Kansas State's 29, and then 30 is Liberty. So Liberty I did consider possibly putting in at that 25 position, but I don't think that they're worthy of it quite yet. As for the teams that I dropped out, we had 4 teams this week move out of the rankings, including North Carolina. They move out of the 15 position. Kansas State was 16, Penn State was 18, and then Army was 25. I did have Army in the rankings last week, but after looking through their schedule a little bit closer, I don't think Army's worthy of a ranking position quite yet. But I do think Army's definitely got some potential to be a decent team if they can keep getting some good wins. Which, they've had they've had a lot of wins this season. Don't get me wrong there. It's just they've not had very convincing wins, which is what I need to see out of a team for me to be able to rank them high. But anyway, that being said, that wraps up my rankings for week 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on these. If you enjoyed this set of rankings, please let me know in the comments below. Slap a like on this video and subscribe as well if you are not already yet. But then again, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.